Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Walking Dead. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, the big focus of this episode is Negan. Obviously, things are still awkward between him and Maggie. Granted, that awkwardness, it's never going to go away, but it is that thing of he's with Carol, and she's kind of taking him out, he's like, yeah, thanks for kind of getting me out of there. I just kind of needed to get away. He's like, but, considering everything, could you smooth things over with Maggie for me, put a good word, considering everything, I've kind of done the help and everything. But she sets him up in the cabin, and it's like, oh, I thought we were, and she's like, yeah, there's not really much I can do. The council just kind of voted on it. She's like, is this real? He's like, did the council really vote in this, or are you just kind of scooting me out? And it's like, well, moved all your stuff here. This rabbit's for you. It's just like, what makes it worse that she's doing it with a smile on her face. It's like, oh, I love it when you smile while you're simultaneously stabbing me in the back to a certain extent. Because especially for Negan, it's like, we made this deal that I help you out with the Whisperers. You help me fix my reputation with everybody. But it's like, at the end of the day, it did nothing. Because also for Negan, it's like, I did all of that. And for what? For you to just do this to me, because hey, at the end of the day, you got what you want. You got your revenge against Alpha. You're not as much in the shit pen as he is, so that's the complicated thing. And obviously he's got old Negan talking to him about oh yeah, used to be back in the day, you spare a few kind words and Lucille, but now all you have is kind words, and look what that's got you. It got you nowhere. You can try to run and do all this, there was some part of you that actually thought people would look at you differently, but you are me. You are Negan. You always will be this version of me, no matter what you try. And it's and so we do see later on, he goes to where Lucille is. Lucille's been here the entire time since season 8's finale. It's been sitting there for years, because it's no one ever got it back. Plus, he was never in a position to go get it, because he was always under, well, for one, he was in the cell for so damn long. But even then, it's even when he was kind of allowed to go out and about, he could never go too far without someone being, hey, let's see what you do. Plus, carrying around Lucille would probably be a situation of, yeah, it'd probably not sit well with people. The weapon that you used to bash so many people's brains in, but being reunited with the weapon made him feel good, because it reminded him of his wife. I think I want to say it's been a couple seasons, but I think the whole thing, especially about her having cancer, I vaguely remember, I think he was talking to Gabriel. I don't think it was with Rick. I'm pretty sure it was with Gabriel when we kind of learned a little bit more about Negan's backstory. Actually, like I said, I vaguely remember the episode, but I don't remember how much he told Gabriel about their circumstances. Because that was the episode you end up learning that's why the bat's named Lucille in the first place. Interesting thing, too, is the actress who plays his wife, Lucille, is his actual real-life wife, too. So I always think that's kind of cute when stuff like that happens. Hillary Burton Morgan. The thing I kind of know her best from is, I'm blanking, it's the Lethal Weapon TV show is what I knew her from. I want to say, it wasn't Parker. It was something with a Palmer. That's it. FBI agent Palmer. That's what it is. I remember it was something with a P. That's the thing I kind of best know her for. But regardless, we kind of got a lot of their backstory. And I thought it was interesting how the story is told. Obviously, we go 12 years ago, then 2 or 3 days forward, and then we go 6 weeks back, and then we go another 7 months. But I thought that was interesting how they told the story in that way. And then slowly but surely, it was almost it's like Inception. You go one deeper and deeper, a dream within a dream within a dream. So it's like a flashback within a flashback within a flashback within a flashback. I don't know why. Just structurally, I thought that was really interesting how they went about proceeding the story, because obviously it's kind of you start at the end and then make your way back to the beginning to a certain extent, because it's we start off with him being held captive by those bikers, hey, you got all this cancer treatment for your wife. Fact of the matter is, you sent us to the wrong place, because we're supposed to be finding this medical camp group of people that have these supplies and stuff. If they've got this type of medical grade stuff, that means they've got some really good stuff. So tell us how you found him. Then 2 or 3 days earlier, we saw hey, he ended up coming across their camp, and obviously ended up getting knocked out by Laura. And I'm yo, I was so that's how you two met. Interesting to know that would eventually become one of your top class people when it came to the Savior. So I was oh, that's interesting. And obviously he proceeds to tell, was it Frankie or Freddie he proceeded to tell him the story about the whole Lucille situation, which we then rewind and kind of see, like, sometime earlier, like, why he's in this situation in the first place is because, of course, things went wrong. Because it was interesting to think of, like, wait, are you some doctor or something? He's like, no, I'm a high school gym teacher. And it's like, wait, so you ended up teaching yourself how to give your wife chemo? He was like, yeah, the stuff, it wasn't too hard because the doctors laid the foundation to let him know how it was done. It was just a simple situation of kind of doing it himself. And so basically for him, every treatment he was giving her was getting closer and closer to her not needing the treatments, because basically at the end of it all, they were kind of down to their last 3 treatments. And it's like, if I do this, then you'll be kind of right as rain. This is what the doctor is saying. But at the very least, he was a lot more hopeful than she was, because for her, it's just kind of like, it was something to kind of hedge their bets on. It's kind of like all they had, And it was really interesting, too, because when we got to see, this side of Negan, a Negan that didn't enjoy killing, like, he almost got done in by a walker because he's never killed anything, and ended up having to be Lucille to come out and, like, use their last bullet on the walker, because he talks about it later. He didn't want to get too used to killing. Ironic, I know, but to be fair, it's like, it's sadly, we've seen time and time again how this world can warp people. That obviously when there is a smidge of darkness in you, this world just ignites that, and spreads it. Because we learn, like, apparently he beat the living crap out of someone. That's why he's on probation right now. It was like a misdemeanor, but like he beat the living crap out of someone. So it shows that he already kind of has an anger issue. He even talks about, like, that whole thing about when people say seeing red, he's like, it's so true. So, doing everything he can, like, despite their circumstances, like, spending time with, Lucille, and, like, the moments, it's so sweet. Once again, it's because they're married in real life, it makes it even sweeter, and, like, because it's almost like, oh, they get to, like, be all cute and adorable on camera, like, who they would be off camera, here we are on camera doing. It's interesting to think about. It's like, oh, we get paid to pretend to be a couple, even though we're really a couple. Like, it's so interesting. That's got to be the benefit of acting with your significant other in that regard, just because it's like, yeah, like, not much pretending having to do. We just get to, like, get paid to have fun to a certain extent. I don't know. I thought, that's where my brain kind of goes with it. But, also, like, obviously they're stuck eating dog food, which she's like, yeah, if I knew that, the world was going to turn to this, I would have started eating this shit a long time ago, that if dog food tasted like this. But even her giving him an anniversary gift, he's like, wait, you remember the date? She's like, no, I don't. But she's like, this is the jacket. He's like, holy crap. It's like his signature jacket. And it's like, apparently he bought it on their credit card, and she, before everything went to shit, she got on his case about it, and she's like, if I knew when the world was going to come to this, like, I wouldn't have gotten so upset about a credit card bill. Apparently, like, she told him that she returned the jacket, but in actuality, she stuffed it in a crawl space just because she was so pissed. Because obviously it's like, because I love the thing of, like, because once again, we flash back to like 7 months ago, and she's like, $600 on the jacket. And at first he's like, oh, and he's playing video games, and he says the signature, oh, you're going to shit your pants, and you're like, that's where it is. Your shit talk as Negan comes from you shit talking teenagers where you're playing video games. That's incredible. I mean, who knows if he just used that natural vernacular around other people anyway. But I love him being, she's like, I'm going to return this. He's like, I lost the receipt. And so, and obviously it's like, for her, it's like, well, I have this, appointment I have to go to. So when it comes to, like, the appointment, he's like, nah, I got my probation, so you're gonna have to go by yourself. Besides, they're gonna just, like, make you wait for hours and they tell you nothing. She obviously finds out she learns she has cancer, which is interesting. Like, obviously this is AMC, it's very similar to, not just very similar, but it's interesting because it, like, similar to the Walter White situation. So it is a situation of, like, oh, her finding out on her own that, like, oh, she has cancer. She tries to contact Negan, can't get in touch with him. Then her friend Janine, and then it starts. Then she calls up the probation officer. Yeah, like, I'm not supposed to see him until, like, what, a couple of weeks or something. And then she looks at her phone. Negan, Janine. And then it pieces together. She's like, shit. Realizing they're having an affair. She goes back home. Got a loaded gun and everything. So I'm curious what would have happened. She was probably, which is actually kind of interesting. Because, like, what started this trip down memory lane is when everything went to shit, after the ice had melted, so, like, because they had to turn the fridge off so they wouldn't attract too much with the generator. So it's a thing of probably if Negan had went ahead and killed that walker and then, like, kept the generator on, maybe things wouldn't have, but because he didn't want to, you never know. It probably would have eventually turned into something like that anyway. But she wanted to tell him she knew about the affair. The fact of the matter is, and she had the gun by her side, and when the time Negan comes home, she just says, I have cancer, and they had that conversation. And for him, it's like, you knew about me and Janine? She's like, yeah. And for him, it's like, and you've never said anything till now. He's like, I promise you, the moment we found out about your diagnosis, I haven't seen her, I haven't even talked to her. She's like, I know, I believe you. But he's like, why tell me now? Because for her, she feels like this is the end of the road for her, and she wants Negan to not feel like, she's like, I don't want you to feel like you have to do this to make it up for me. You've already made it up plenty by sticking by my side this far through it all. Even through to the end of the world, you're still here by my side helping me. It's like, so I don't want you, like, the fact is, you should just stay here with me. Because he was like, he wants to go try and track down the doctor so he can find some supplies, obviously, while he was going to 6 weeks in, our second flashback where we are, with him trying to get the medicine. For her, she just didn't want him to go. She's just like, stay here with me because, I need you to live on and keep fighting, not just for me, but, fight for, not just for you, but fight for me too. Which for him, it's like, I'm not giving up, because it's no longer, it's not just guilt. It's like, he loves her. And it's like, because that was also the thing too of like, us staying here isn't going to be enough. Like, we need to go find people. And I think a lot of that is why Negan has the perspective he had with the Saviors, looking at people as a resource, that we can't just straight up kill people unless we're kind of forced to it in that situation, because people for him are too much of a resource. And I think maybe like his whole circumstances with Lucille, seeing what people are capable of on both sides, both on the good side and the bad side, because he promises not to let Lucille go. So he ended up finding the doctors. Obviously the doctor, like, dude ended up feeding him, because it's like, yeah, you're probably malnourished and this and that, you're exhausted. And it's like, yeah, I tried to rob you, and rob them with an empty gun. And understanding his circumstances, understanding all that, the doctor took care of him. He's like, I tried to rob you, and you guys ended up feeding me. That's the crazy thing. And so, because it's like, and you've done all this for me. You even got me everything I need to take care of my wife, and you didn't ask for anything in return. He was like, yeah. And he was kind of hoping that it's kind of almost like a pay it forward situation, that basically we continue that goodwill. And I think that in itself is probably what made, like I said, that make him look at people as like, there are people, like, you need people to survive in this world. Because even, like I said, Lucille was trying to say, like, we need other people because we can't kind of go at this alone. And we even find out, like, what Laura hit him with was the bat that would eventually become Lucille. And so she ended up giving it to him. And it's like, so once again, it's interesting. That's probably why Laura was like one of his top brass people, because they go this far back, and also to know that, like, oh, she's the one that kind of set him on his, at least with, that aspect of Negan. It's like she played a part in his origin story within this world to a certain extent. But then sadly, the bikers ended up catching up with them, and he ended up telling them where they were just so he can get away with the medicine and everything. But by the time he gets back to Lucille, she's gone. I had a feeling like it was going to be a circumstance very similar, AMC-wise, to the Saint of Killers. Not Saint of Killers. Was he the... yeah, he was the Saint of Killers, right? Right. The Saint, like, the cowboy. Him, very similar circumstances. He wasn't able to get back in time to his family, and he died. Except Lucille's situation was even worse. She didn't just die, she killed herself. And it's just like, that's just the most heartbreaking thing. And part of me was like, I wonder, will he use Lucille on Lucille? And it like turned out not to be the case at all. That's a very like heartbreaking situation. Like, obviously it's like, for her, she figured this was the only way. She was like, she left a note on her door, please don't leave me like this. It looks like she took a whole bunch of pills and she wrapped a plastic bag around her head. Just so, because I think for her, she's like, he's just going to spend the rest of his life like doing this, going above and beyond for me, and it's like, this is the only way he's going to, because she probably feels like he's like, this whole like my chemo isn't a guarantee, like, so I'm just going to slow you down, like, you're just going to forever stay here, because he was even saying, once you get better, we'll get you on my bike and we'll go wherever you want to go. And obviously he doesn't kill her immediately. He just rips the bag off her head, and he just lays by the bed. And in that moment, puts the jacket on. He doesn't kill her. He just burns the house down and leaves, because he doesn't want, it's just like burning everything. Like, rather than feeling anything, he'd rather feel nothing. And then he proceeds to track down the bikers, and he proceeds to kill everybody. And then, like, that moment he has with the dude, the moment it's like he knocked the guy out. Because, like, we see it in the moment. I was like, oh, you got that good old Lucille the first time he gets in that good whack. And the blood covering the bat. But the moment he gets to the main dude, the moment the dude gets tied up, and then he puts him on his knees, I was like, yep, here we go. And then he tells the story about why he got fired in the first place, and kind of understand that moment of like seeing red. Obviously back then there were repercussions, there were consequences for seeing red. Seeing red was a bad thing. Because of that, I ended up getting fired because the dude I beat up, his kids go to my school, were in my gym class. And school didn't, like that whole aspect, so I got fired. Then the dude sued me. My wife had to pay his medical bills, and that was the circumstances they were in. And now it's like, look at this. With the way the world is now, like, nothing that there's no consequences. Like, when you see red, you just go lean into it. So he's like, you might be asking yourself, like, what's the point of this? The point is, you should have killed me. And then proceeds to bash his head. And so it's like, this is where it starts. Even getting people on their knees to do it like that, this is where it all starts. He had let home dude go, and he's like, yeah, go find your daughter. So this is kind of like the beginning stages of the Saviors. And even present day, he turns as a walker's coming by, and he whacks it twice, but Lucille breaks. And it's like, after, it's been a couple years, so of course it's kind of written away. Because obviously by the time he caught up with them, like, it had only been like a couple years in between that and him building up the Saviors to where they are basically in season 6/7, like, when we actually get introduced to him. So, years of probably being under the ground like that rotted away the wood. But, it's symbolic in that moment of like, yeah, he always wanted to get back to Lucille, and now he did. It's actually ironic. In many days, it just layers upon layers to the metaphor, because it took him weeks to get back to Lucille, his Lucille, and now years to get back to this Lucille. So it just kind of came full circle in that regard. And for him, he even apologizing, because it's like, I should have been there for you, but I was too scared. He was too filled with shame, so he'd rather spend his time feeling nothing than feeling that shame and all. But he's like, back to feeling it. She's like, I even named some stupid bad after you. He's like, I basically wishing he had been there. Like, if he had just stayed with her, she wouldn't have had to die like that. At least they would have been together. She could have died by his side or something. It's like, I could have been there for you in your last moments, but you spent that time alone. And he's like, I hope you're up there in heaven strewing away, which he's like, I don't really, but fair is fair. And so he promises that he is going to keep fighting for her, living his life not just for her, for himself, but for her as well. And kind of burns Lucille, because it's his way of kind of letting go of who he was as Negan, because now who he is now going forward is going to be the interesting thing. Because at the end of the day, he walks back to town, which even, Daryl's looking, Maggie's looking, and Carol comes over to him and is like, whoa, like, oh, they're going to do a supply thing, but it's like, he's like, yeah, just give me a cart, I'm going to go pick up the rest of my stuff. She's like, I tried to get you to live out there because Maggie will kill you. I just didn't want it on my conscience, now it won't be. And he was like, fair enough, and kind of keeps walking, and he kind of looks at Maggie and he kind of smiles, because I don't know whether it's just a thing of, for him, I think I look at it as simply a thing of, I'm not going to run anymore. Me looking for your forgiveness and everything like that, whether I get it or not, that's beside the point. I'm just going to live my life, because I don't live just for myself. I got to live for Lucille. I've run away for too long. I've run away from everything too long. So you want to kill me? Then that's, and if it makes you feel better, then so be it. I don't think he's going to fight it anymore, because I think for him, he's got another lease on life, because we saw the scene, let's not forget, Rick slit his throat but kept him alive anyway, just because of what Carl had said. And so he's gotten another new lease on life, and what that necessarily means, I don't know. I'm really curious to see what this means for Negan going forward. It is going to be a thing of, I'm never going to be shamed. I made the mistakes I did. I can't do anything about it. I can't erase it. So if Maggie wants to kill me, he probably won't make it easy for her, or maybe he will. It's hard to say. Like, I feel like he won't, because it's like, nah, I got too much. I gotta keep living now. But whatever comes my way, comes my way. Once again, he has said there are no consequences for seeing red. He's living a consequence of seeing red time and time again. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go on that front. Like I said, this was a great episode to get that insight into Negan, to understand him on that level, kind of, because it's tragedies that ended up forging a lot of people in this world. Yes, a lot of people have lost a lot and didn't go down the route Negan did, but once again, this world can, it can ignite that darkness inside of you, what might have been a spark before, because like I said, he's definitely got that anger in him. It was kind of, in a twisted way, it was kind of sweet when he was like, yeah, after he beat the shit out of the dude, it's like, I pulled $1 out of his pocket and I played her our favorite song, because it's like, yeah, we went to our favorite bar because it has our favorite jukebox, because it plays our favorite song, You Are So Beautiful, and he played it twice for his wife afterwards. So it's just, I'm really, really interested to see where all this kind of takes this next season, especially that look in Maggie's face. It's just like, when the time comes, will she have a Rick moment of like, oh, I'm not going to kill you, or is it, no, I'm definitely going to kill you? It's definitely going to be interesting, because it's like, for her, she's not, because it's a situation of them both not letting the past hold them back anymore to a certain extent. Because it was her way, like, she couldn't be around Negan anymore because he was a constant reminder, and obviously being around Maggie was a constant reminder of for him too, all the mistakes he made. So, like, once again, maybe he's over trying to gain people's forgiveness. Maybe it's just a thing of, let my actions speak louder than words. I'll prove myself in that regard. I tried proving myself before, but that didn't work out. And maybe it's not even about proving yourself anymore. Maybe it's just, once again, just living your life, for not just your sake, but for your wife, because it's like, you've got this new lease on life. And like I said, I'm just really interested to see what that means in the grand scheme of things for next season. So this was the final bonus episode. It's not next week, but the week after next is when Fear the Walking Dead returns. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where everything ends up taking us when The Walking Dead finally returns. I haven't looked into it. I'm sure depending on the production schedule, I don't know if they've even started like filming anything right now. I think before the bonus episodes came out, I don't think they'd even started writing stuff for season 11 yet. Maybe not. I don't know. There was also something recent that made me think like, oh, apparently maybe this next season isn't the final season, or because I caught a quick glimpse of something where Jeffrey Dean Morgan was like, oh, I wasn't aware this was the final season. So like, because there was a whole bunch of reports out saying like, oh, this 11th season is going to be the final season. So, or maybe that's supposed to represent the fact it's like, well, it's a whole universe, because you have Fear the Walking Dead, and even though it's a limited series, The Walking Dead World Beyond, obviously a lot of this is going to intersect. So maybe that's what that was about. Once again, I should have clicked on it, but it was just something I skimmed past. So I probably have to, if you know more information, like I'm not above being corrected. Do let me know if I'm wrong about some information like that, whether that's still solidified as being the final season, or whether that was something else entirely. Like I said, I'll probably end up looking into it myself, but so for my sake, or anyone else that might be curious about it, if you know what, do leave it in the comments down below. But yeah, like I said, I'm really interested to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward next season. So where Negan's story takes him, I don't know if there's necessarily going to be a happily ever after, because even if you go by the comic book, because the show bounces back and forth, where sometimes it strays quite a bit away from the comic book. In other regards, it's kind of strayed towards the comic book. So who knows what that means at the end of the day with where the story currently is. Well, ultimately, like I said, have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.